Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast presented by Robert Half, 2023 Hiring and Compensation Trends. My name is Carolyn Shumley, and I am the host of the webcast today. Please take a moment to open the chat module by clicking on the chat bubble icon at the lower right corner of your screen. This will then open a chat area on the right-hand side of your screen, and you'll see a drop-down menu with options next to the words "to." If you have any technical problems today, please send a message to host. That's me, and I'll be able to help you out with any questions that you may have. If you have questions or comments for our presenter, you may chat to all panelists. And if you have comments or questions that you would like everyone to see, chat to everyone. We will have time for a Q&A at the conclusion of today's webcast. A recording of this webcast will be available tomorrow, and we'll be sure to send everyone a link with that information. The sponsor for today's webcast is Robert Half, and joining us today is Jamie Sullivan, who you see on camera right now. Jamie is the Executive Director of the Legal Practice at Robert Half, a premier talent solutions firm. She is a noted author and speaker on legal employment and practice management topics. She joined us last year to talk about hiring trends and is a monthly contributor of career and management advice to ALA's Career Resources website. Jamie began her career with Robert Half in 2002 as an account executive in Columbus, Ohio. Over the years, she has held various management positions within the company and has received recognition for serving on project committees, mentoring internal employees, and for her leadership performance. Based in Dallas, Jamie became executive director in 2016 and manages operations for the legal practice in North America. Prior to her employment with Robert Half, Jamie worked as a law clerk at an Ohio law firm and for the Ohio State Legislature. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication from the Ohio State University and a Juris Doctor from Capital University Law School, both in Columbus, Ohio. So with that, I'd like to welcome Jamie. I'll go ahead and make you the presenter, and you may begin today's presentation. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure to come on camera for a bit to say hello. I'm really delighted to be with you all today and also to dive into our topic. It's great to visit with you again this year as we did last year this time. So before we kind of really get into the meat of the presentation, really overall, I know how busy everybody is, but I also know whether you're listening to this live or the recording, how important hiring and retention issues are right now for everyone. And as managers in the legal field, you're faced with it every day. And we know key personnel have been really quitting their jobs voluntarily in record numbers since spring of 2021. And many employees really remain confident in this current market on what their job prospects are, which that means as legal managers, we must continue to be on the lookout for the possibility of top performers leaving. So, what can legal managers do to reduce attrition? In today's environment, managers must stay current with the latest trends in compensation to really better address those job candidates' salary expectations, as well as professional concerns such as wellness benefits and workplace culture. Today, I'm going to spend time discussing hiring and compensation trends and highlights from our 2023 Robert Half Salary Guide, which is a complimentary publication along with many resources out there, as well as the ALA and the compensation resources that you provide, which obviously provide helpful tools, not only about compensation, but just in general employment insights. Robert Half has actually been tracking compensation and publishing salary forecasts since 1950. And our 2023 salary guide is completely online and it's very easy for you to customize. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the middle of the presentation, but hopefully you've had a chance to actually explore a salary guide in the past. It's really been great to help with projections and insights on what those employment trends are, help you to plan with hiring budgets, write job descriptions, create compensation packages, as well as, of course, retain employees. So today, I'm actually going to first touch on national hiring and compensation trends and really focus on what are both hiring as well as retention strategies, and that includes perks, benefits, and flexible work. And then I'll explore more of the current marketplace of the legal field, followed by a spotlight on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'll wrap up with a summary of some key takeaways, and as we've mentioned, we'll have some Q&A as well at the end. And as we know, smart salary discussions begin with the latest research, so let's go ahead and jump in. National trends really reflect what's happening around the world. So we know the pandemic is really no longer the driving force behind work-related trends, but there are definitely still uncertainties that could affect the job market. We've hear about the war in Ukraine, inflation, supply chain disruptions, of course, the fear of recession. Those are just a few that we hear in the news on a day-to-day basis. Despite all of that, starting salaries in the legal field continue to trend upward and sharply. So that is really for specific in-demand positions. So let's take a look at some facts and some features that are affecting law firms and corporate legal departments across the US. So hopefully these are some numbers that you have seen. These are specifically from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. So from a national perspective on unemployment, in October, it was 3.7%. And that was a slight increase from the 3.5% in September. And just to level set here, pre-pandemic percentages, so February of 2020, we were at 3.5% then for unemployment. The BLS will put out some new stats tomorrow, so be on the lookout for those. But as it relates to unemployment for college degrees, it's even lower. It's 1.9%. And that's pretty much been the trend throughout the year. For attorneys, unemployment at 0.1%. And this is back from July from the BLS. For paralegals, legal assistants, it was 3%. And then you can see here 3.4% for legal secretaries and administrative staff. A note here, in October, job openings were at 10.5 million. The BLS just updated that today, actually. So they always do a look back and do adjustments. So still quite astonishing. And the quit level was at 4 million in October. So still all in a really good, story, if you will, of what's going on there in the market from an unemployment perspective, as well as the jobs that are out there. For employers, hiring is job number one, because guess what? The quits won't quit. Millions of workers are still resigning every month. And that figure doesn't account for, you think about retirements, discharges, transfers, or other types of separations. To replace departing employees, employers are using a variety of strategies to attract skilled candidates. Managers are also improving the employee experience as a way to increase interest in their company. So some of these steps include helping workers add skills and reach their career goals. We've also seen boosting environmental, social, and governance efforts, so the ESG front, if you will. And then working toward diversity, equity, and inclusion in their workforce. And we've also seen some employers offering community and volunteer service opportunities with matching contributions to really help attract talent. These are also play as another major trend, are important to help increase retention efforts, which we're going to address that here in a little more detail in a moment. With employers increasing starting salary offers for new employees, pay compression is becoming an issue. So I'm sure some of you have experienced this or heard about this. But this is when those new hires we're bringing in earn significantly more than a long-term employee in the same role or a similar role. In fact, 60% of employers said employees have expressed concerns about this very issue. And as a result of that, we've seen 82% of senior managers have given raises to those who express concerns about discrepancy in pay. This, of course, is done to really help keep our tenured employees from leaving us, which now leads us to retention. So retention continues to be of the utmost importance, and I hear about it regularly in the legal managers that we're working with, but as well as across the board with managers. So besides giving raises to employees to kind of bring up that pay compression issue, some of the other things that we're looking at, 52%, right, are increasing compensation just in general. But many are going back to the topic of improving the employee experience. And 46% are increasing their recognition efforts, and 45% are allowing for remote work, which we're also going to talk more about today. Savvy employers are trying to make working for them a much more enjoyable experience so that they can retain their employees. And most employees like being recognized for their efforts. So I think that's a pretty common thing that we're hearing in the field. Nothing new, but at least going above and beyond to make sure that we're making those recognition efforts. And for remote work options, well, this is obviously a much bigger trend as of late. And those flexible works options, we're talking both about remote, we're also talking about those hybrid options, and then also what we call a flexible schedule. These practices, we know they boomed, right, because of the pandemic, but they've taken on a whole new life of their own. And flexible work is now an expectation among employees and job seekers, not merely a perk anymore. Many factors, including work life balance and long commute times that are associated with a cost also to do that, that's playing a part into also the continued thought of flexibility in remote work. What's more, employers are having a much harder time saying that remote or hybrid work is not doable for their company because many professionals have shown great success in doing just that since March of 2020. More and more, when and whether employees go into the office is based on something really important here, and that's purpose. They might be on site for performance reviews, large group meetings, celebrations, and team building, or maybe they're meeting with a mentor. Client meetings are another reason, a purpose to come into the office, as well as trainings and ideation sessions and so on. But they will also work off site, right? Day to day basis. But again, really plan for in purpose or in the office reasons with a purpose. Whether legal professionals can work remotely depends on their role. So we kind of look at attorneys versus maybe a legal support role. And then how well is your firm set up technologically? And there are some general trends that I'd like you to consider from the research that we've done. 60% of employees work fully remote or hybrid schedules in the current landscape. 41% of senior managers told us that employees have quit rather than returning to the office full time. Pretty astonishing, right? So now there's, that whole correlation is not causation, but it's really hard to ignore how well these numbers align. And in addition to that, 52% of our workers want more flexibility in determining which days and hours that they work. So here are some other figures to consider. 41% of employees said they plan to look for a new job. And of those, 54% want a fully remote position, but 55% are open to roles with a hybrid schedule. So however you want to read these numbers and kind of focus on that, more than half of the workforce want flexible work of some type. And with candidates in control in the current job market, they can be, and they are. And they're being very selective about which job offers that they are accepting. Flexible work is about, let's say it's more not only about where people work, but it also includes when people work. So I mentioned this flexible schedule. So that would include flex time or windowed work. And I know I mentioned window work last year in the presentation that we had. So that is still really much resonated throughout the year. And those other options, that what we're looking for that differ from the typical 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. schedule. That's what we're talking about when we're referencing flexible scheduling. Employees typically love these options as they tend to offer better work life balance and, of course, time for personal matters that maybe just can't be done, like outside of those standard business hours. And trust me, their enthusiasm is reflected in their work. So 56% of workers said that flexible scheduling has increased their morale, and nearly one third said it's helped them be more productive during working hours. We're also seeing moves toward a compressed work week. And 64% of senior managers are saying that they envision that their company will move to a 4-day work week within the next 5 years. And 55% said they would support a 4-day, 40-hour work week for their teams now. Again, this is more of a national overall that we've heard about the compressed work week. So I'm sure you've heard it in the news, right? There's many companies in the US as well as around the world that are experimenting with different types of flexible work. So this arrangement may not work for every organization. It may not perfectly translate over into the legal environment or into law firms, but change is definitely in the air. And our 2023 salary guide has its own section on flexible work. So unfortunately, we can't fit all of that in today's presentation. So I would encourage you to take some time in the guide itself and review some more of that discussion. Employees and job seekers aren't the only ones, though, that benefit from flexible arrangements. Companies do too, law firms do too. And they've also done this in the form of contract talent, which we often refer to as a flexible workforce. Employers' use of this interim staff is definitely rising. And I'd like to note here, so in 2021, 35% of hiring managers said that they plan to bring in more contract talent for 2022 than what they had that previous year. Well, apparently that was not enough because that figure skyrocketed. It actually went by 20 percentage points over the last year. And now 55% of companies plan to increase the use of contractors and that project based professional in the next 12 months. We also assess kind of the second half of 2022. I know we're here already in the 1st of December, but 45% said that they had planned to increase the number of contract or project-based employees in the second half of the year to really make sure they could hit critical projects before the end of the year. This flexibility or flexible employee workforce is really ideal for a couple of different reasons. And what I'd probably say we've seen the most is access to talent with a specialized expertise as that reason. And some of those areas has been within data privacy, compliance, contracts management, or been the most that we've heard that about. We've also heard it though, because there might be a gap, if you will, in the current staff that an organization has. And a couple of different areas that I've seen those gaps in skills has been due to technology platforms. We've definitely seen this in legal. We know there's a lot of different legal tech out there. And if somebody within the firm doesn't have a particular technology platform skill, bringing in this flexible workforce to help fill that gap in the interim, or maybe bringing in someone who has an expertise in a practice area that you are a little lacking of in your firm, or also in the area of an industry expertise. We've also, of course, seen utilization of flexible work to relieve heavy workloads. A lot of times this has come up in litigation dockets when those are increasing, as well as pending deadlines on new regulations. And most often I've seen that in data privacy as well. And then we also know that companies and firms are using this as a way to recruit talent. Many employers are bringing in contract talent with an eye on their potential for joining the team on a permanent basis. And almost 2/3 of managers have converted contract professionals to full-time staff for the past year, and that was actually 64%. So again, another great way to even beef up and hire by using flexible talent. So related to that flexible workforce is another topic of managed services. And that's using a third-party provider for maybe an entire process, function, or a service. Within the legal field, we often see this with requests from our law firms or corporate legal department clients for specifically litigation support and e-discovery, document review, contract management services, as well as what I've already mentioned a couple of times, right? Compliance and data privacy. And then also for mergers and acquisition support. 73% of companies use managed services arrangements as part of their business initiatives. And this means bringing in anywhere from maybe one contractor to an entire team to lead and help with or consult on projects. And companies really like those managed services set up because it really provides an access to professionals with those specialized expertise, and it offers them a much larger talent pool and improved methodologies, all without having to go through the hassle or the expense of manually recruiting and hiring, and of course, onboarding then of multiple professionals, hence why they've turned to managed services. Pretty astonishing the number that we've seen and how that's increased over the years. So before we dive into the trends for the legal field, I did want to first kind of pause here. This is a snapshot of some of the actual salaries in the salary guide. And the salaries in the guide are strictly starting salaries for a worker who is new to the company. And starting salaries we know can vary greatly, of course, depending on the job candidate's experience and expertise, as well as the company size, the market, and the demand for the role. And so that's why we take the approach of separating them out into percentiles. And so I want to walk through kind of a quick high level following, a candidate description, if you will, of how that would fit into these percentiles in case you're not familiar with our salary guide percentiles. So for the 25th percentile, this is a person that's new to the role with little or no experience, and they require more than the casual instruction or supervision is required to perform the day-to-day duties. So for the 50th percentile, the candidate has the experience to consistently perform core responsibilities without direct supervision, and they're very comfortable with the process and the subject matter that is associated with the role. And we would consider this the midpoint of the salary range. The 75th percentile, well, this is a individual that really has value to the organization, and it goes far beyond the ability to perform the normal job duties and what they can do. And they might even have rare qualifications that enable consistent contribution in a very unique way to the organization. And they probably are ready for that next career level when it's available in the organization. So, again, these are average starting salaries at the national level. And so you can go into our salary guide and it makes you much easier for you on the ability to customize it for your local market, and you can do so online. So, quickly, some examples of some of the variances to give the audience a mindset of how maybe you fall into compared to the national figures here. So, on the East, for Boston, it's actually 33% higher than the national average. DC is 33% as well. New York, 38%. So kind of the middle of the US, Chicago is 24% above the national figure. Denver is 17%. And then all the way to the west, LA is 31%, Seattle, 29%, and San Francisco is at 35% above the national trend. So one way that many managers use this data is to prepare for salary negotiations. I talked about it on the front end as well, like even pulling together compensation packages, et cetera. But we'll hope that you will visit the salary guide if you haven't already, and spend some time diving into your local market. And here is just some really quick additional information for your reference. I know Carolyn mentioned that you will get a PDF tomorrow, I believe it'll come out. So this is just something for you to reference about the resources that we used for the survey data that I'm referencing throughout the presentation today and what those methodologies were. and a little bit of background information, if you will, on how we determine those salaries that are listed in the tables in the salary guide. All right, so now let's dive into very specific trends in the legal field. So, our research shows that the top ways that legal, specifically legal employers, are successfully attracting and retaining talent share a very common thread: promoting good work life balance. And those examples are a little bit of what we talked about, right? Remote work, hybrid, flexible scheduling options. And in some cases, this is actually more attractive than salary increases. 76% of legal managers said that offering remote work options has really helped them to hire strong candidates and keep strong candidates. And on the other side of the coin, 44% cited increased workloads and burnout was a primary reason for retention struggles. So it would seem that offering this flexible option, flexible schedules, and having flexibility in your approach would help with some of those retention issues. And speaking of remote work, there are legal positions that are probably most likely to remain remote going into 2023. So we have those listed here. We've definitely continued to see that with contract manager roles, and then also within law firms, specifically the law firm associates. Rounding that out is in that e-discovery space, and as well as patent agents. Work-life balance is great, but money still does talk in some cases. And for example, we've heard from some of our recruiters that organizations out there, they're offering to pay off law school loans for promising students in the hopes that they're going to join their ranks. And I find that really interesting. And man, I wish that would have been around when I was graduating law school. But it is, again, another great way to attract talent. So law firms that are looking to, expand, they're definitely shifting their hiring practices. We've seen small and mid-sized firms navigating this competitive candidate market by recruiting talent from corporate legal departments and practice areas that are related to specializations. And then firms of all sizes are bringing in associates who can open new specialty areas. And in some cases, as we've seen in the market and in the news, they're hiring entire teams of lawyers from other firms. We've seen that over the years, but I think sometimes it resonates a little bit more in the current economic landscape. And contract roles, yes, just to mention that again, they can benefit both from the workers and the employers. As we've mentioned already, the national kind of trends as it relates to bringing in contract talent, more and more often, legal organizations are bringing in contract legal support professionals to handle those day-to-day responsibilities to help save costs and free up time for their permanent staff. 44% of legal managers said they plan to increase the use of contract professionals in the coming year. And we see this really as a great strategy. And as an example, it can, bringing in lawyers on a contract basis can really allow a firm to save money and also diversify their legal services that they're offering to their end client. And according to our recruiters, lawyers who are working on a project basis feel the biggest benefits of those contract roles contribute to a better work-life balance for them and also a greater variety of work, broadening their skills and making them more attractive. And I know we've got some questions coming into the chat. We'll definitely make sure we're saving some time to address that at the end. And we'll also share a link to the salary guide as well. So in addition, according to our research and what we're hearing from our recruiters on the ground day to day, this snapshot here is about those most in-demand practice areas that we're seeing. So data privacy, it's an ever-changing landscape. So hence why we can continue to see that in demand to find individuals that have that skill set and that knowledge. I'm not going to go through all of these, but family law, including trust and estates, we saw heightened awareness around that through the pandemic, and hence why that continues to be in demand, as well as the retirees in the market. Our general business commercial law, this includes commercial transactions, intellectual property, as well as M&A. And then litigation, that includes civil and commercial litigation, as well as insurance defense and personal injury. And just on this slide, we wanted to also note for you what are those industries that are especially eager to hire legal professionals. And just to comment, in the government space, partially, yes, due to the pandemic and what was going on in the market, we saw an influx in the demand for legal professionals, predominantly around the unemployment aspect as well as appeals work. From a manufacturing standpoint, we saw that kind of increase because of supply chain and contract matters and issues. So I won't go into detail here, but as you can imagine, finance as well as healthcare and technology have also continued to be industries looking for legal professionals. Based on our firsthand knowledge of the labor market conditions and trends, this is some of the hottest law firm positions that we will see continue in 2023 listed here. And I've mentioned these a little bit already. Added to that is the legal administrator role. But firm associates and paralegals are two of the most in-demand roles that we see posted in the market as well as requested from our clients. All right. And one thing I will say, we know it's not going to get easier. We know it's not going to change. We know it continues to be a tough, labor market out there with what we're hearing and seeing. And I think for this group, I'll go back to what I mentioned on the unemployment numbers. So finding talent, since we're hearing unemployment at 0.8% for attorneys, 3% for paralegals, how you attract, how you really get your message out there of what makes you different as a law firm will be really critical and continue to be important to attract legal professionals. And now to those benefits and the perks. This can be just as important as salary when it comes to attracting talent and retaining top talent in the legal field. This is especially the case in the candidates in this market today. Companies are providing much of what workers want in terms of standard offerings, but some are falling short on those flexible work options. Many firms, though, are enhancing their benefits and their perks to really gain an edge in hiring and retention. So we're going to dive in here as an overview of what firms are generally offering and what workers want most. So on the left-hand side here, this is specific to employers and what they are most oftentimes offering. And on the right-hand side is what workers are ranking as most important to them that they are seeking in benefits. And you can see for the first two spots, we're aligning, right? The employer and the employee are aligned in what is being offered from a supply perspective and what's being demanded. Where we start to differ, and something that we see very often, is retirement savings plans, or what are the matching contributions that are being displayed. So that's one to take into consideration, and how do you elevate that, or what is your current package? Leave of absence has come up as well. And maybe we've seen this offered from some organizations as even a sabbatical, depending on how long somebody has been with a firm or a company. But it is something that's being asked about more and more often. And this really then starts to span into what is your wellness and health and benefits overall packages that you're being offered. So I'd say take some time to resonate on that and what your firm is offering and how it aligns with, again, your current staff as well as who you're trying to attract. And diving in a little deeper here, so these are the perks that are most popular right now. And again, the darker gray, that's the perks that the workers want most. So it'll be on your left-hand side. And then the lighter blue are the employers, what they're most offering. So again, flexible work schedules, remote work options are right there at the top. So I think that's really important to take note that that's not going away. It's definitely continued to be talked about. But maybe I'll pause just for a minute there. I know we've again got some individuals dropping questions into the chat, but as you think about remote work options, how many days per week do you think employees would like to work remotely? Any guesses out there? As I pause. So I see 2, I see 3. All right, we've got some action. Great. And you're right, it's three. Three seems to be the sweet spot. Again, this is overall survey data. And again, that's as we ask, why is that? And they feel like that's really the right balance, as it's what I'm willing to commute and what I want in person, day to day, or interactions with my boss and my colleagues to be. And feeling three is the right balance. So many of you out there got that right, and as it relates to what we're seeing requested. We also ask workers what they want more from their employer. So here's kind of a summary: 80% flexibility in where and when they work, so that combination. And right behind it at 79% was work life balance. And then 59% are seeking professional development. And I think this is something we've definitely seen with the newer generations that we're hiring. Like, what is your investment in me and my skills and my development and mentorship? So many organizations looking to match that and provide that. And then 51% are just asking, companies support their overall well-being and how they invest in that. Hopefully, some of that aligns with what you're hearing as well. And 83% of HR managers said that their company has added new perks and has responded. And they've added perks, they've added benefits, and they're really listening to the hiring market out there. And we've already talked about remote work opportunities on almost every slide. But in the middle there, I mentioned this briefly just a moment ago: the mental health resources, the wellness programs. What are you doing to offer programs or webinars that your employees can tap into that are all around mental health? What are the resources that you're providing them, obviously anonymously, that they can take advantage of? And again, wellness programs, which does have to do with health, but we've also seen that related to financial wellness. Huge investment and change in this area. And we're finding many candidates asking us about that and what some of the clients that we're working with and what they're offering. So something to take in consideration if you're looking at new perks that you want to add or new benefits. Are you looking at these types of programs that would fall into place and align with attracting and, again, retaining talent? I'll mention on the stipend for the home office, right? That's been a huge home run because of the pandemic and everybody basically going overnight working remotely. Offering a home office stipend has allowed individuals to get set up at home and work more comfortably and thus be more productive. And we have seen many, many organizations make that a staple in what they're offering and when they're onboarding new employees. So we'll take a moment here to talk a little bit more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we know more and more businesses and law firms are embracing this. And they're doing it by creating pathways to have really diverse representation. They're also making sure they're promoting inclusive work environments, and then also making sure they're providing equitable access. Really important, equitable access to those opportunities and advancements within the organization. And this is really proving not only to be good for business in a wide variety of ways, but it also is how it improves the overall experience of retention, but then also to attract talent in the first place. And I'll say, for diversity and inclusion, equity, we know this ranks extremely high as a priority with workers. In fact, and employees across all demographics support DEI. They're asking about DEI efforts, and 80% are saying that they actually will make sure that that's a requirement, that they understand a company or a firm's DEI approach before they will sign on with a company or a firm. And actually, to narrow that down even further, it's 83% for legal, that they are more interested if they're going to look at joining a new organization or a firm, that's how high it ranks for them. And many companies, we know DEI has been out there, it's been a focus. Legal has done a really nice job in the market on focusing in this. And it's had a little bit more of a spotlight the last couple of years. But how do you actually take that next step? And what most, large majority of companies, 86%, they're really taking those actionable steps to have a greater DEI platform. And 85% of employees expect that. They expect the company to have DEI initiatives. They expect it to be well supported and they want to know about it. And I think this, next portion here, I just pause for a minute to kind of talk a little bit about how do you build a build DEI into your recruitment process? How do you build it into your corporate culture? And what we have seen, many companies, they're making sure and taking the effort to post their open roles on DEI related job sites. They're also working directly with organizations that are dedicated to increasing access and opportunity for what would be historically underrepresented groups to make sure that they can find talent within those groups. And then, of course, if you've heard of employee network groups or what we would call ENGs, Robert Half, we actually really believe in fostering a corporate culture where all people can connect, thrive, and grow. And some of our personal DEI efforts include those employee network groups. And those are specifically created by employees for employees. And what the ENGs do, they really bring together colleagues with common interests. They also receive significant funding and support from our leadership team. We also have forged alliances with a range of organizations that support the needs and the interest of diverse groups. And also, collaborating with these organizations has truly enabled our company to enhance the workforce and community development, including providing network opportunities, recruiting, community engagement, and professional development opportunities to all of our employees. And here are some strategies to really, I guess, have that successful DEI front. And I already mentioned this one on the leadership perspective, but making sure your firm's leadership is involved and they are bought in, it's extremely critical to being able to implement any of your DEI initiatives at any level of the organization, but to have your company executives involved. Accountability. Accountability is so important. And this really actually goes back to setting benchmarks in the beginning and then collecting DEI related data and really show, is the strategy you have in place working? And where do you need to go? Like, where can you improve so that you can see your DEI efforts move forward? From a transparency standpoint, really making sure you're publicizing your DEI initiatives. What are your set goals? Talking about them, and then making sure you're sharing that data across the entire organization, all the way down to every individual. And this transparency allows employees to really, again, back to accountability, hold the company accountable. It also makes them feel more engaged in the process. And man, it gives them a voice and it really goes a long way. And DEI efforts, they really shouldn't stay just inside the company or the firm, but make sure that you're getting involved in the community and your firm is involved in the community. Have the firm sponsor outreach events and volunteer your own personal time, making it really easy for employees around you to do the same because they'll take your lead as well. Well, I know I've covered a lot, so I appreciate you all hanging in here with me. And again, I know we've had some questions dropped in the chat, but I just wanted to take a minute and maybe just highlight a few takeaways that hopefully you've had from the presentation today. Um, we've talked about it from the very beginning. Today's workers have choices. And so to attract and retain those talented legal professionals, employers will need to sweeten their compensation packages. Use our salary guide, use other resources that are out there like the ALA, and benchmark your latest salary that you have in your firm, benchmark it against what we're seeing in those ranges out in the market. And consider, do you have to upgrade any of those compensation packages, as well as look at potentially upgrading benefits and perks. And reminder, this includes that issue of wage compression. So making sure you have salary transparency, you've got to make sure of that because as you're hiring new individuals, you need to ensure your new hires and your current employees are ranking the same and getting paid the same. So please be sure to review the salaries of your current employees and how that compares to any new hires. Job seekers want flexibility. They're getting it. And top on their list is that hybrid or remote work arrangement. Some of those other perks include that flexible scheduling that we talked about today, as well as what's considered that compressed work week that's on the horizon. Flexibility is good, not just for workers, but for employers too. And that's why for more and more firms, they are using project-based professionals and managed services. If you have any questions around talent solutions, we'd be happy to talk about that, and you can feel free to ping me directly. But lastly, DEI, those DEI efforts, that continues to be such an important trend. Your firm's efforts in this area can make a huge difference in your ability to recruit and retain top talent. And I'm seeing this as other recruiters are seeing this, and workers today want to be associated with organizations where that everyone feels welcome and that they can be themselves. And I think we dropped it in the chat as well, the information on the salary guide. Here's some additional information as to the salary guide calculator that I mentioned, which is where you can go in and specifically localize for your market. What is your percentage or trend and difference from the national average? We also listed our blog here that we're consistently posting a wide variety of articles around retention and attracting talent. And then I would also just mention that we do have a Robert Half app. If you are in the market yourself and looking for a role, the app is a great way to interact with us and see job opportunities that we have available. Or if you know somebody in your network that's looking for a new opportunity, again, the app's a great way to interact with us on that. All right, so I think we have a few questions that I wanted to make sure that we went back and tried to address some of those.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. What a helpful information and great presentation. Some of the questions that came in while you were discussing remote work and some desire for flexibility, there was a question about do you have stats based on attorney versus support positions? And then also, do you anticipate some of those trends that you were mentioning? Do you anticipate those changing if we do hit a recession?
Sure. So our survey data does not necessarily break it down per se per attorney, per paralegal, per legal support. What I can say is we have seen more often that remote or hybrid structures are being offered to attorneys and paralegals. But we've also seen that demand come from that level as well, particularly attorneys wanting, though, the hybrid approach and knowing. So, if we take like the associate level, if you will, and even the senior associate level, if they're coming into the office, they want to make sure that they're able to interact with their peers, their colleagues, as well as have the opportunity for mentorship. So, that includes having those other senior associates as well as partners in the office the same time they are. So, it's kind of a if we're going to do it, we want to make sure we're able to interact with purpose with other individuals. Probably more often from our client perspective, we see requests for maybe a little more time for legal support to be on site, not 100%, but maybe it's just 3 full days or 4 full days and 1 day at home that we've seen. Now, the question on do we think this might change if a recession hits? I wish I had that crystal ball to tell you. What I can say from talking with law firm leaders, legal department leaders, is they know flexible work is here to stay. And if they want to keep talent, retain talent, attract new talent, they will have to offer some sort of flexibility. So it's not a broad stroke, it's going away. And it's not a broad stroke that it's 100% going to be on site either. At least that's what we're hearing from the managers we're speaking to.
Okay, how about when it comes to working remotely? You had mentioned a stipend for a home office, and there was a question about what amount of a stipend for a home office? How do you determine that?
Yeah, so we've seen a run in the gamut. I think this goes back to what is your technology setup that you have with your firm, enabling somebody to work remotely. And so you write standard, you're going to issue already to them probably a laptop, computer, et cetera. So stipends have I've seen go anywhere from a $250, onboarding stipend to set up any additional items that you may need to get started. And then subsequently, we've seen anywhere from 50 to 75 to even 100 a month. So that would really depend, like, do they have supplies when they go into the office that they can partake in? Or and if not, you're supplementing that they can use that to buy their own supplies, right? Printer paper, notebooks, pens, etc., sticky notes. So it's kind of all over the place. So think about, what do you already offer? What's your technological setup? Do you have supplies that you're already giving? And I think you can go from there and how you adjust. But probably standard is almost up to 250 on that, again, onboarding to complete your office setup. And then some do a monthly, some do a quarterly stipend after that on a lesser amount.
Okay, how do you address hourly employees who want to work from home who are in support positions? So, for example, legal secretarial staff, mailroom, receptionist.
Sure. So, what did you do during the height of the pandemic? Would be my first question for you, just to kind of look internally. How did you flip that switch overnight, and what were they able to do remotely? And then now looking at that individual, that very specific. So before it's like, look at the role and what you did, and now look at that individual and how productive are they? Have you given them an opportunity to show their productivity? Have they sat down with you and discussed, here are the job duties that I can proficiently conduct at home. Here's what I know I need to be in the office to do. And it's almost rewriting that job description, so you know specifically what can be done in the office and what can be done at home. We realize that there are some of those positions that just require more time in the office. You gave some of those examples of, um, you know, I think mail clerk or file clerk, right? And running through the mailroom. So I think it's just a matter of, what are some of the busier days that hands down somebody needs to be in the office? Or do you have multiple people conducting the same role that you can stagger their schedules, so allowing for some of that work balance, that an individual can have a little bit of time working from home while somebody else is at the office covering the meat of the day-to-day heaviest activities. But I think, look at what you did during the height of the pandemic, what worked, what didn't, and then now looking at the individual and then assessing from there.
That's great, great advice. How about, we have a question that came in that I think would be really helpful to all of our ALA colleagues on the line. As an office manager, how do you explain to the partners of a law firm how important competitive benefits and flexibility are in order to retain talent? So, what are some takeaways that the audience today can share with their um, law firm partners on this idea of flexibility?
Sure. I always love these questions. I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to the stats, and so we do a really nice job of putting a lot of that in the presentation. And so you will get the PDF to the presentation, so you're going to have hands down some of those stats. This is We've done both national surveys as well as specific to legal, right? And so if you think about some of those methodologies that I mentioned, we are surveying very specific legal professionals, legal managers. And so this is coming straight from the horse's mouth, I guess, if you will, on what they're requiring, what they're seeking to keep them happy and to keep them onboarded. And we survey small to mid-sized to large. So we're not dissecting one piece of the population. So I see it as, we're giving you factual survey data from like peers, from like competitors, and from legal talent, highly attractable legal talent in the market. And so I would take facts to your partners and really sit down with them and show them, this is what the market is stating they want, this is what the market is demanding, and this is what they're getting. Our competitors are offering it, and I think I'd hope that, because you have absolute survey data from like-minded competitors, like sizes of other firms that you could utilize that in your conversations that could hopefully help boost their awareness of what's going on.
Another question that came in regarding the remote work. It says, how do you address remote employees in regards to salaries? So employees moving to less expensive areas versus employees that were perhaps hired in less expensive areas.
Yeah, we definitely would. A couple of things. First, I would definitely encourage you, how you approach from a tax perspective, like whoever you partner with from a CPA tax perspective, making sure you know the impact to your firm for those individuals moving or hiring those individuals in other markets. And then secondly, our salary guide does specifically provide for that market because of that particular market conditions. That includes living conditions, that includes their own market compressions, that is why their salary might be higher or lower. But if you're concerned and you were talked about that pay compression and you're still trying to keep that all even, also look at, well, you're not commuting. You're not commuting into the office, but this person is commuting into the office. So we take that into consideration for their salary. Be very specific though in how you map that out. For the most part, we have seen people, it's not a huge discrepancy. And if there is a change in I'm here sitting in Dallas and you're paying me something differently than my colleague that's sitting out in West Texas, let's say, why? And well, you're not commuting in, you don't have to travel in for face-to-face meetings. You have that less of an option that you don't have the cost of commuting in. And so the change there is maybe a 5K difference that we have seen, but not astronomically of like 20K difference. So I would really assess some of those, like what is different in the job. And if they're not coming into the office, that's a great starting point, and not commuting into the office is a great starting point of why salaries may be different.
Here's another question on salary. For those of us at small firms that can't compete with the big firm salaries, how should we interpret the salary data? Does the survey guide have a small firm subset of data?
So great question. We don't break it out by size of firm, but I would say kind of back to those percentiles that I was mentioning, kind of falling into how does the individual skill set manage? And you have an opportunity to actually recruit individuals in that maybe don't have the high end of the 75th percentile experience, but could be midpoint to the 25%, and set up a very strategic plan on how you're going to onboard them and upskill them early on to get to the skill level that you're looking for. So you could hire them in at that quote unquote lower salary, knowing that there might be a few gaps in their skills, but again, map out a very set plan on how you onboard them and get them that attention that they need, whether that's through a mentorship, whether that's through very specific CLEs, other recommended courses, whatever. You just have to, we've seen this come up quite a bit. And that's usually the way, is assess where maybe there's a lack of knowledge and set up that onboarding program to get them where you want them. But then are able to still hire them in where you fits into your small firm's budget.
Okay, and it looks like we have time for about one more question. This one comes in about quiet quitting. So I'm hearing a lot about quiet quitting. What does that mean, and what does it mean for employers?
Yeah. So if you haven't already heard about quiet quitting, this term really became popular on TikTok of all places, and it actually is a bit misleading. It's not really about slacking off or hoping your boss doesn't notice what you're doing or not doing for that matter. But really it's about workers drawing boundaries and having a healthy work-life balance. So this isn't really anything new. And employers should just really keep an eye on this and encourage your workers to take time off, take their breaks so that they don't get burned out. I'll tell you, on the other side of this, I've heard recently also quiet constraint. And this is actually then refusing to share knowledge with your peers. Still really early on here, and doing a little bit more study around that, but that's just about prioritizing how you communicate and listen with your employees, giving them a voice, but then also recognizing them and rewarding them for sharing knowledge and bringing their peers along with them. So quiet quitting, again, a little misleading, and I think quiet constraint might also be a little misleading.
Great. Well, thank you, Jamie, so much for the information and answering our questions. Thank you to everyone who attended today. Look out for an email from us tomorrow. We'll send a link with a recording of today's session as well as a PDF of the slides. And please visit our event calendar to sign up for more webcasts coming up to end out the year and into next year. So thank you so much. We hope everyone has a great day and a great start to the holiday season. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.